Okay, welcome to another episode of Panakal, a podcast for geeks, the show about good friends hanging out, talking about things we all love. Today, my guest is Tatiana Dykes, and I have a co-host, Jason Engel, who you guys have seen a bunch of times. Thanks, Jason, for being on too to help. We're going to talk about
You're
collecting
welcome.
art, Magic Gathering, and comic books. I see you've got a Diamond box sitting behind you already, which is awesome. Do you work for Diamond?
No, I just have a lot of them from over the years, so
Oh,
they're
okay.
great for packing because they're really thick, sturdy boxes.
Yeah, sure.
Exactly.
Well, I didn't really have I try to explain the show to you. Basically, I don't really have like a set list of like action items I'm going to hit you with. I just was curious about I didn't realize you were a collector till about a month ago. Really, I seen you in the art industry and stuff, and I just assumed you were just an artist like the rest of us, just making art and selling your stuff. So, tell us a little bit about what you do, and then we'll field it from there. I guess that's a good way to do it.
Sure. I do a lot of things. So I've been working in
I just was curious.
the quote unquote industry since I was 18. So I've been,
okay.
I started out working in comic book retail when I was 18. I worked in retail until I was 22, working my way up to being a manager and all that stuff. And then our store closed and I finished college. And then starting in my later 20s, I started doing convention organization and promotion work. So I used to be part of Big Wow Comic Fest, which was a medium to large size convention that was in San Jose, California, put on all by art collectors, so that that was the focus of our show. So most of our guests were artists. And now I help with Lake Como, so most of our Comic Art Festival, which is in Lake Como. That's in May. And then I have been an art rep, excuse me, my own TD Art. And I've been doing that for 5 years. So I represent some amazing comic book artists and also illustrators. I've also been collecting art since I was 18. So I just picked it up. It was something I was passionate about. I've been collecting comic art since then. I started collecting magic art in 2014. And then right after collecting magic art, I started collecting like other illustration art. Because once I got introduced to other artists, I just kind of fell in love with a wide variety of different types of things. I am technically also a published artist because my boyfriend works in comics. So I've worked on a few books. Not that I'm very good or have a lot of time.
What did you say, Jason?
I was just saying, wow, that's kind of neat. I didn't know that.
Yeah. So mostly, inking stuff, because that's what he does.
Sure.
So I've done some of that. And in my daytime life, I have a completely different thing that I do, which is, so I went to school for nutrition. I have my bachelor's and master's in nutrition. I'm also a certified personal trainer.
Oh, cool.
And in my day job, I work in public health, and I'm the director for the WIC program, which is one of those nationwide programs that helps provide food for women and families and small children. Yeah. So I do
That's
a lot
awesome.
of things.
Well, it's kind of nice that you don't 100. Man, I think some of us do 100% art, and that's stressful at some point. So it's kind of nice to have a little something on the side. Like sometimes I talk to artists who are like they have day jobs as well, and I feel like that's kind of it's good and bad, right? Like some of them hate their day jobs, and some of them are like it helps them kind of relax and split the difference. And unless because if you're doing 100, I feel like if I'm doing art all day long, I stress too much about it. Maybe.
Okay, I can see that.
I mean, I think Jason does art all day. Speaking of, when he's not drinking, obviously.
Yeah, I was going to say when I'm not drinking, but the stress is fine. That's what the whiskey's for.
Yeah, man, I wish I had a drink. Okay, but
Tell me about your whiskey, Jason.
Say what?
Tell me about your whiskey. What are you drinking?
Yeah, there you go.
This is Balvenie, 12-year sherry cask, or no, 15-year sherry cask.
Jason's also very fancy. If you haven't figured it out. I get the cheap shit over
red wine.
Dude, I had Jeremy Wilson on one day, and we did a whole episode on whiskeys and scotches. I think it was whiskey and scotch, and then we talked about art, obviously. But he was like one of my early guests, and he was like, "What if we talk about whiskey?" And I was like, "Yeah, sure, that sounds interesting." So then he had me drinking whiskey at like 10 in the morning while I was doing the show on a Saturday, so it wasn't so bad.
Though. It was that's It's your job, man.
But then, you know, I had to go the rest of the day kind of, we did a couple tastings, which was great. And then I realized he was, if you guys know Jeremy Wilson, he actually works at I want to say it's a whiskey bar in his area.
Yeah.
So he's very like knowledgeable in it. But back to you, Tatiana, I want to talk about like, so it's kind of cool. Like, I don't know a lot about, I wanted to actually talk to you about being a collector because you know, like the collectors I've met, I try my best to be like cordial with the collectors at a LuxCon, but I always end up with them being in my face about one thing or another. Especially, I feel like a lot of collectors don't. We were talking about this before we went live, but I feel like a lot of collectors don't seem to like digital artists. So I always have this like, they have this like slight animosity towards us. I guess I'll fucking say it. I don't care. It's my show. And you know, I'm always just like trying to be polite. Like, okay, it's not for you. That's fine. You know, but then I always edge on this feeling of what if I did do some traditional stuff just to get, you know, like a bucket list item, right? Like get a collector to buy. Like I have unique items that I sell, like you know, that are digital though, right? And I'm working on traditional stuff, but it's kind of like I feel like I'm doing a thing just to appease a different what's the word I'm looking for? Like a category of customer, right? Whereas, you know, at shows I do just fine. It's just a bucket list item, but also I'm curious because like I don't think you hate digital artists, so I'm not trying to say that. But I do feel like a lot of collectors look at digital art as not original. You know, when they want to say not traditional. Does that make sense?
It makes sense. I think that where most collectors are is that collectors don't, and obviously I'm not talking about everybody, but you know, most of the people who I know, I don't have any problem with digital artists. They just wish they were traditional so they could buy their art.
Right. I think that's a good way to look at it. Yeah.
Original artwork. You know, like I've been doing for, I'm not going to say how many years, but since I was 18. A long time. Okay, it's been over 20 years. I've been collecting art.
I think that's cool, by the way.
Yeah. Oh, thank you. So the thing about it is that once you're collecting originals and you own a lot of them, you're very unlikely to buy something that isn't traditional art. Because you kind of get there's this mindset of if it's not traditional, then even if it's one of one, it could be more than one of one. And not that that's true necessarily, but that's kind of the mindset that develops. And then there's also the thought of, well, if I collect traditional art and I already have a hard time getting all my art up on the walls, then I don't want to buy something that's not traditional art.
Sure.
Sure. Yeah.
Yeah. So I think for most collectors, we have no problem with digital artists at all. It's just I wish this was traditional. I'll give you a good example. I'm a huge fan of Randy Vargas.
Oh, yeah.
He's one of my favorite magic artists. He's just incredibly talented. He puts so much love into his work, and he's digital. And he can paint. He's a great painter. It's a time thing, right? I mean, and I know that I'm sure you both understand this too. It's like, whatever you're prolific, whatever you're really good at and you're fast at, obviously that's going to be easier for you. And when you're digital, you don't have to deal with a lot of things that traditional artists have to deal with. And he's one of those guys where every time something comes out, I say, man, I wish that was traditional because I love his work.
Yeah.
And you know, he gets time to do something traditional. He just doesn't have time.
He's done some repaints. I think part of the problem with Randy, especially though, is that he does 5 or 6 magic cards at a time, which means he doesn't have the available time to slow down that process in any way.
He's cooking them out really fast.
Yeah, I think he'll probably start doing more traditional work, you know, as his career goes on. But I mean, he's still relatively new to Magic compared to guys like me. So I mean, he's probably got more cards than I have in the game already, just because he's got a much, you know, greater work ethic than a lot of the guys could manage to do without going like insane trying to keep up that pace. I mean, he's an incredible talent, but I do think now that he's done some repaints, I think it's just a matter of time before he slows it down and starts doing it, you know, more traditional more often.
Yeah.
Enjoy it. He's in one of my groups, so I get to see most of his stuff when it's partly done.
That's
and
cool.
It's always fun to see his process.
Yeah, I've never I've tried. I have you can't see the mess to the side, but there's a table here full of paint. I've been trying to traditionally paint some of my stuff in my style, but none of it's comfortable enough for me to like post on socials or share yet. So I've just been kind of like tinkering. And again, it's more for myself because I want to be like, oh, can I do this traditionally? But like you're saying, as a digital artist, it's like the amount of time I spent working on this right now, I could have cranked out like 2 or 3 pieces, right? And so in my head, I'm like, well, just keep working on it on the side, and sometimes, maybe someday. Because there's this one collector at IX, I'm not going to name her, but I really want to be like, check it out, and then be like, I'm not selling it to you, like just to be like, this is your fault, but I don't mean to trash on collectors. So, but yeah, I do see a lot of magic artists doing what you were talking about with I don't know if they call them paint overs, but they do take their original digital work and then do
a physical painting of it.
Physical painting of it, and then they sell that as a one-off, right? Which is, hey man, you got the skill set to do that. I think it's cool. I'm having the trouble I'm having is recreating some of the digital values, I guess is a word I would use for that. So
your art has such an incredible graphic quality to it. I think that would be very hard to reproduce traditionally.
It's a headache. It's like why am I even doing? But I feel like if I can lock in on it, it's just gonna be like me leveling up a little bit. I'll have that cool like aha moment, and I'll be like, hey, I did it, But yeah, I mean, I started out doing graphic design when I was in my teens, right? That's my main degree is web and graphic design. Graphic design was what I studied the most. So and when I was learning like typography and stuff, I had to use pen and ink. Like everything was like had to be perfect, and I didn't have a lot of like the Photoshop stuff I do now. Like a lot of stuff is Illustrator, Photoshop. You can do it all so much quicker. So why not, right? Yeah, it's just not. I'm not, like I said, I'm not stressing it. It's just a cool thing I want to try.
Yeah. I mean, I think the thing is that if you want to start doing traditional, you need to do it for you.
Yeah.
Don't do it because collectors are pressuring you. With magic, I think it's a different discussion because it becomes like, if you take the extra time to paint this traditionally, you can make a lot of extra money. And so we've seen a lot of, Jason, you transitioned, right? Like,
your piece is up on auction right now, isn't it?
Yeah, I like to think of myself as still in transition, but yes, I did sort of do digital work for about 20 years or almost, and before I started doing original work. But honestly, the reason that I did start doing original work was actually for the collectors, because they had been asking me to do original work for so many years, and the last few years I started paying more attention to the collector community that existed, and it started to sort of seem like more of an important thing for me to do than it used to, because for the longest time I had kind of a similar experience to Allen, where I kind of felt like the collector mentality towards digital art was inherently negative, and it sort of gave me more of a kind of a confrontational feeling about the issue than it should have. But the more I paid attention to the community itself, the more I started to sort of really realize that these people are just generally people that I kind of have the same interests with. It's just their careers sort of went a different direction than mine, but we all love art, and we all want to collect as much of it as we can, because we enjoy it. And once I sort of changed my mentality in that way, I realized that it was something that I really wanted to do, but it's specifically for the collectors, because I feel like it's a good community to be a part of, because it's very organic, and we all sort of have that same shared interest.
I mean, I will say I was definitely very excited when you started moving traditional, and I was really excited when you moved over all the way, because you had, I think it was the gods that they were kind of like partially done traditionally, and then in the last year or two you've been doing all traditional, which I absolutely love. But I think that you're absolutely right, because once somebody knows your art's available and starts buying your art, like I always knew who you were, but you were much more on my radar once there was original pieces to buy.
Sure. And that makes sense. When your interest in the art and the business is from a collector standpoint, those are the people that are going to take up, the most oxygen. But, I've enjoyed digital art, for so long that was mainly my career aspiration. Like originals were something that I sort of planned to do, but didn't really actually plan. Really, I sort of expected I would get around to eventually. But it wasn't something that I really expected to really do as early as I ended up doing it. The reason to sort of change over was simply a matter of the magic cards that I was getting sent to me were so significant, and the characters were so recognizable that I really sort of wanted to do original pieces with them. And it sort of just changed my priorities on its own. So. And I'm glad it did, because I've had a lot of fun doing it.
Yeah.
I mean,
and I think that I think one thing people don't understand is that some people think that digital art is easier than traditional art.
Oh, they absolutely
And so I think that's one of the issues that some collectors. One of the things that I've learned working in the industry for a long time is that one of the things there's a huge disconnect between actual art and the art process and what collectors think.
Right.
So that's one of those things that really should be worked on. That's one of the things we've been doing in the MTG art market is trying to promote more of the digital artists. So making sure to share, if there's a piece that's just digital, we're not going to have an auction for it. We'll share it in the cover photo. Or, we're doing like happy birthday posts for artists. They don't have to be traditional. They're still magic artists, anybody who's digital. So trying to promote more of that. We're starting to see more digital artists doing like, one-of-one prints. That's been popular in comics for the last several years. So, you just do a one-of-one. So it still has that unique quality to it. So that there's something to sell and kind of, bridging that gap into the collector community. And there are several collectors who have only done traditional collecting who are now starting to pick up some of the one-of-ones. In comic books, since it's been happening longer, it's becoming more normal. A lot of the newer collectors we have coming up, younger collectors, are saying, yeah, it's fine. This is original art to me because so much art is done digitally that this is original. And then you have that generational gap. When you have older collectors, that's where the big disconnect is. But we're in that transition period right now, which happens with any change.
What is one-of-one in the comic stuff mean? Like you're talking about the first run of the comic covers?
So with all of the comic book artwork, when I say one-of-one, we call them APs in comics, but it's a single copy, high quality print. I'm actually working on it for my business right now. Most of my artists are traditional, but a few of my artists also do digital work when they are in a pinch. And then we've had collectors ask, hey, I want to buy that Spider-Man cover. Man, I'm really sorry, that was digital. It doesn't exist. Well, now we can make it exist. And so a friend of mine owns a printing company that just does all high quality printing, and I'm testing out, because you want to make it really nice, right? You don't want it to be like a $20 convention print. Correct. So we're testing out some different papers. They're going to come with really nice certificates that say exactly what they are. It's going to have an embossed stamp. And then that's as close to traditional as you can get.
So that sounds like, Jason, that sounds like what I do. So with my big metals, right? They're not technically one-offs. But only like, I only make one at a time. I tell my customers I only make one at a time. They come with the certificates. They're numbered. So like if you were to get like my Traveler, for example, there's only 4 or 5 that exist right now of that piece in that size. And the people that are buying that for me are they're specific, right? Because they're expensive. So they're like very like, they all have one piece of it, and they have the certificate that shows. So I forget who has the first one, but he's probably got the best one, right? He's got number 1 in the series of 5, like I said. And so I found that I didn't think that would work, actually, because in my head, everyone was like, you should only sell 1 and call it a day. But then I was like, I'm digital. I can keep repeating this process because I'm digital. But I didn't want to sell like 1,000 of them because then it kind of doesn't give it that value. So I haven't put a cap on it, even though people keep saying you should cap it. I'm like, why? It's not like I'm selling like 10 at a time,
The thing about collector mentality is, well, you're not selling 10 at a time, but how do I know how many you're ever going to make? And I'm just being honest with you about how.
Oh yeah, no, I get it.
So if you say I only make one at a time and I'm only ever going to make 10, then people know only 10 of these exist in the whole world. So having that cap for collectors does matter. And it is frustrating, especially from a point where you're like, how many do I make? Do I make them all now? Should I just make a batch? But that's just the thought process with collectors. But I know that
I get it. Trust me.
Stuff like that now, I know metal prints, like really high quality metal prints. A lot of people are loving those right now.
Yeah, whenever I sell one of those at a show, I'm like, I know it's going to someone very because they're not cheap. So I'm like, okay, you obviously have the money to buy this, and you're obviously like the work. Otherwise, you wouldn't spend this much money on it. Like it's just like any of the stuff on the wall behind me, right? All that's original, and it wasn't cheap. I had to save up and roll the dice and hope it was still available when I was ready to buy it. And if it was, I spent the money, and but that's a big purchase to make, especially if, for a collector or a fan. In this case, I guess they're fans. I call them collectors because I feel like they are collecting a limited piece. But you're right, I should put a number on them. I just have never thought of what that number is, to be honestly. 10 sounds like the right number, but then I'm always like, man, what happens if you sell more than 10? Then you're screwed. You
got to think more in, I think, long term when it comes down to stuff like this, because the exclusivity adds value. It incentivizes the sale, but it also adds long-term value, so the collectors can justify the purchase years later. Much easier.
That makes sense of the other pieces that are out there, basically. Mm-hmm.
Yeah, and I mean, you're going to continue making work, so it's not like you need to be selling more than 10 of these things to make it worth your while, right? I mean, you're selling for like $800 to $1,000 or something. I mean, you're making quite a bit more on a limited run than most artists can make, simply because the metallic prints work so well with your style, and it's great. I love everything about it, but it still would benefit from a cap on it. And the fact that you can just keep making new ones every season and sort of continue to justify that.
Yeah, that's not a bad idea.
You can say, well, I've got these new ones now.
all the collectors watching right now are probably like, this motherfucker is gonna screw it up. But I will admit, I was gonna say something before when you're talking about your graphic design skills. A lot of the last couple pieces that I've been working on, I owe Jason a lot, because he's been very good at looking over the work for me and then being like, here's a bunch of stuff you missed, or a bunch of cool ideas you can try, and it's like, holy shit. And a lot of it's stuff just, when you I have a bad habit of I'll tinker to a point where I should stop, or I'll just not think about a couple extra little cool tricks that I should already have in my wheelhouse, and I just don't think about it, right? And then I'll show it to
not natural for you yet. It's still new. So
that's a good way of looking at it. Because I took Scott's Fisher's Smart Art School class. I'm taking it again because he's really good. But he looked at a lot of my work, and he's like, you're right there, man. He's like, you just keep not doing these extra things. I keep telling you, and again, like you said, it's probably because I'm not used to it. So it's like not a habit. But yeah, now you guys got me thinking about limiting my count to 10.
When it comes to prints, I would say 10 is the most, other than one of one. So we have your one of one unique, I'm never doing this again. And then 10 is kind of the next. Occasionally you see 5, but usually it's 10.
10, yeah.
And then there's 25, 50, 100, 200, 500.
Right.
And then after that, if you're just a one person making prints, you don't usually count after 200.
Right, because you're sitting on a stack of prints otherwise, basically.
Yeah. But I mean, obviously, the higher the number of reprints on something, the smaller the price is. So you have to look at where your maximum profit margin is. Because, how much does it cost to make one print? How much does it cost if you make 10 at a time? Right, there's that bulk ordering stuff too.
Right.
And then how much can you charge? And then if you make 25, well, if you can charge half as much, but sell 25, you're making more money. But if you can only charge a third of the price, then why would you make 25? You should make 10.
Right. Because you're losing at that point. Yeah, try to explain, like, you know, like, it's hard to, like, a lot of people are like, oh, you selling this thing at $1,000. I'm like, I'm really not making 1,000 on it because it costs, you know, X to produce. Metal's not cheap.
No.
And then
not large. Yeah.
Especially that large, exactly. And then that comes ready to, like, with I forget what they call it, like a French frame around it. So it's pushed out. It's got a cable. It's got, like, all this extra stuff, you know? And the vendor that makes it is very good. They're really easy to work with. They know my stuff. So, like, I don't have to stress that the product's going to be bad, but it's, like, the cost, right? So it's, like, not making as much as you think on them, but it's still cool to, like, have them at a show, bring people to the booth. But I get what you're saying with those, you know, the pricing it accordingly, so you're still walking away with some profit in your pocket. But I never thought about the fact that down the line that product could be worth more if you limit it, and you're sitting on, like, you know, if I were to, like, say save one for myself, or I wouldn't do that because I don't want my own art on my wall. But, you know, that's just weird. So.
Well, then what you can do, like, let's say you make 10, and let's say you have 2 that just haven't sold for some reason. Pull them back for a couple seasons.
Right.
And then bring one with you to a show and charge 50% more.
That's not a bad idea either.
Yeah.
And I know collectors don't like to hear that, but that's the reality. I've had collectors get mad. Well, this piece of art's 25 years old. Why is it so expensive? Because it's 25 years old.
It's like,
it's not like food. There's no expiration date on this, man. It actually adds value.
Yeah. That's like some of the stuff, you know, like when I would bring these pieces home from shows back in the day, you know, when my wife and I, before we were married, we were just dating, and she'd be like, what are you doing? You keep buying all this art, you know. She likes art, but not to the level I do, obviously. So I'd be like, these are originals. The value on them alone is, you know, every artist on that wall I love, right? So it's not like I'm just like, oh, that's an original, I'm gonna buy it, let's go, you know. Also, like, who knows? I don't plan on selling any of that stuff, but they could be worth a lot now. Who knows, right? So it's kind of cool, but I get it. I do have prints too.
It's a lot better than collecting shoes, right? Or something like most things lose value as soon as they come in the door.
I've seen those shoes. I have a friend who collects shoes. He's got like a wall of, and if he's watching, I'm sorry, I'm calling you out. I'm not gonna name you, but it's just got like a wall of shoes, and they wear them next to never. And I'm just like, you know, I'm always like weirded out by those kind of collectors, but also I'm like, hey man, I guess that's your thing, right? The dude next door to us, he's like 91 years old. The dude, he collects golf balls, which is like the weirdest fucking thing to me. But he's got like a wall of golf balls, and I'm just like, that's cool, you know. It's like that weird thing that he collects, right? Like we collect art and comics. Like I have comics. I love comics, right? I was going to talk about comics, and I wanted your opinion on like CGC stuff too, but you know, like, so like, you know, when I meet someone who collects hats, I have a lot of hats. I wear a lot of hats, but I wouldn't call them collections because I wear all my hats, right?
Yeah.
But
I guess that's the difference. If you collect shoes and you collect like Nike Dunks or like some of the really, really hard to get stuff, you can actually make money reselling those, but you can't wear them.
Right. So he sells, he got like a pair of like Jordans that were worth like buku bucks, man. I mean, he sold them I was shocked at whoever bought them because I was like, why? They're just shoes. But then he took that money, invested it, obviously, which was smart of him. Yeah. But to the guy who bought it, why? Where are you going to wear these expensive ass shoes?
The same thing about art. Yeah. Why do you spend that much money on art? You could just get a print.
Correct.
You know,
because you love it, right? Because you love the thing. Yeah, you buy it because you love the thing, right? You spend that much money on art because you like. Why do I need a $400 sideshow? I didn't pay for this, by the way. I won it, but as an example, like if I were to pay for it, that thing costs $400, right?
Oh yeah.
But I love Green Lantern. Actually, I paid for the Green Lantern. I won the FET, so I spent $400 on this guy back in the day. But normal people would say that's a waste of money, right? If you're not a fan or a collector, but the sideshow ones are also limited editions, right? They're limited to, I believe, 10,000. So I don't know what number's on the back of that thing, but the value on that right now is upwards of $2,000 if I wanted to sell it, right?
Yeah.
Wow.
So,
Right?
important question here. Who's your favorite Green Lantern?
I like Hal Jordan. I like Kyle Rayner too, but if I were to list them, I'd say Hal Jordan, Kyle Rayner, and then John Stewart. Is that his name? John Stewart?
Yeah. Oh, Guy Gardner's not even on your list? I'm offended.
Guy Gardner's a bit too much for me. I don't hate him.
Over the top.
Yeah, that's a good way to say it. He's over the top. Hal Jordan has been like, I guess it's because I started reading Green Lantern comics when I was like, 10. Like my cousins gave me a lot. I got into comics because I had a cousin who went away to college. I talk about this guy all the time, but I never name him, and I won't. But he went away to college and decided, I'm too old for these things. And out of those things that he was too old for was a box full of toys, which is like Transformers, G.I. Joes, Thundercats, the works, He-Man. And then a box full of comic books, which was like Green Lantern, Batman, Spider-Man, Punisher, Daredevils, you name it. It was in this box. And just a bunch of and then music, like albums and stuff. I don't know why he thought he was too old for Depeche Mode, but he gave me a bunch of albums, and I've never heard of Depeche Mode at this time. Okay, so I was just like listening to this record, like what is this? You know, I grew up on punk music, and I grew up in Chicago, so I listened to a lot of house and rap and R&B. So Depeche Mode is like punk music came from that, and a little bit of Depeche Mode, and I started listening, but Green Lantern, I started with Hal Jordan, and I like Hal Jordan, but I don't like what they did to Hal Jordan.
Oh, I agree, yeah.
Right?
He's been put through the ringer many times.
Dude, they did him dirty. Like, he's supposed to be like the best of the best, and they're like, I guess it's kind of to show you that even the best of the best has faults, but also, like, what the fuck is happening with this guy now? And then I feel like the writers were like, now we don't know what to do. So we're just going to, like, they do that. What do they do that year zero or whatever, where they like rebooted everything? I hate that shit. That's why
I stopped reading last time they did that. I used to read so many books, and I canceled all of them last time they did. I just got mad.
It's the same thing with like, I think like I was talking to my cousin about X-Men. X-Men is probably like the most retconned comic book in existence, right? Like they consistently retcon X-Men comics. But I've been reading like the new stuff with the Powers of X, House of X, now Sword of X. And they always do this. They start out strong and you're like, ooh, this is going to be so good. And then in the middle, you're like, this is still not bad. And then they get to the climax basically. And they're like, we did not map this out. So we don't know what the fuck we're supposed to do. And you just want to like shake the shit out of them because you're like, you've been doing this for over 20 plus years. Who do I need to like slap? Yeah. You know, like to be like, stop fucking doing this. Because as an X fan, like I started reading it again. And then I'm reading Sword of X like completely confused. Like, are these guys immortals now? Are they like, you know, I kind of get it because they're trying to push that narrative into the movies, but keep them separate. I'm fine with the movies being the movies and the comics being the comics.
I feel like with every X-Men comic, they need to run every storyline past Chris Claremont first. Like, everything needs to pass the Chris Claremont test.
He would definitely have crossed off a lot of bullshit that's happening right now and been like, because he gave you like perfect storylines, just stick to them, right? Like, but I feel like they want to reboot them because they want to like make money. I get it. They want to make money and stay in it. But like, have you read House of X or Powers of X yet?
No, I'm like 3 years behind. I stopped reading because I didn't have time, and I'm just going to start probably doing all my comics digitally just because I don't...
Dude, that's what I do. Space. I can't, I don't have space to have I had just been slowly bringing boxes home from my parents' house, and I think I've sent you a photo of this, Jason. I got so many boxes of comics. I'm just like, I don't want to fill up this room with comic books, so I've been reading. I signed up for Marvel Universe, and everything's on there. Also, if I don't like it, I'm like, oh, I'm glad I didn't spend that much money on this, you know?
Yeah. I mean, it's hard when you have your own business and stuff. Like, you just don't have room for all that. Like, my office, this is just all, you know, art. Like, this is all inventory and stuff. So
yeah, my closet's full of supplies.
Yeah. I've cut way back on my comics. I've sold a lot of comics, and I still have about 15 or 20 short boxes.
I should talk to you about selling comics later, because I have about... I don't know, man, 15 boxes still. And as I look through them, I feel like I can condense it down to like 2 and like just get rid of everything else because it's not like I'm sitting here reading comics all day as much as I'd love to. If you have a lot of
X-Men stuff that you don't want, ask Jeremy. Because I know Jeremy picked up some X-Men stuff for me a few years ago, and so obviously I made it really cheap, like less than I paid for him.
Sure.
But you can ask him if there's any stuff that he's looking for. I know he likes X-Men.
Jeremy Wilson?
Yeah.
Okay. I haven't messaged him in a minute, but yeah. He's one of those artists that every time I see him at LuxCon, he's like, let's see that traditional stuff, man. And I know he's coming, it's from a good place, but then like that, my anxiety goes like straight up because I'm just like, man, I haven't done anything. Like, so now I'm trying because I want to bring some of this stuff to a LuxCon with me this year. Whether it's good or bad, it's going to be on the table because I'm just going to be like, here's what I tried.
Oh, I think that's a great idea.
Take it or leave it.
That's a great idea. Jeremy's one of those guys. His art's very different from yours, but it also has a very graphic quality in a very different way.
Yeah. That's his Lobster Johnson right there, the test piece.
Okay. I love his work. I have 2 of Jeremy's Witcher covers.
Yeah, I have hang on. I bought something from him at LuxCon.
But I think that's part of why he's bugging you, because he's able. Oh yeah, that was the issue 4 cover. Yeah.
So this is the one he was selling at LuxCon. I'm like, so this is what I'm talking about. This is like one of those pieces where I'm not going to tell you what I paid, but I was just like, I have to have it, right? Like, I was like,
no, that piece is great.
And I saved up money for it. Yeah, I've gotten to this point where I used to be like, don't spend big bucks on art because you got a kid, you got a wife, you got a family, you got to like save the money. But now I've gotten to a point where I'm just like, here's this fund on the side because I like art and I want to collect it because when I'm old, I'd like to look at this art and just be like, check out all this cool shit I still have, like with artists that I actually love. So like, I save up money and I hold on to it till LuxCon basically. And then
and it's an investment too. Yeah. Like if you ever, there was a period of time where I worked for the military in a hospital, and they had big cutbacks, and a bunch of us lost our jobs. And I was able to keep up on all my bills for the 6 months I was unemployed, and part of that was selling art. Like I didn't want to have to sell art for my collection, but at least I knew I could do that and keep my house and keep my car.
Oh man, there was a moment before we bought this house where I was about to sell those sculpts back there because I was like, we need money for a down payment. And I would have done it, but I would have been very sad doing it. And also like the originals on the walls. But I was like, same thing you're saying. Like there's a moment where you're like, I could sell this. I could make some money on it. I'd rather not. I'd rather hold on to all this and hopefully my kid can enjoy it. And she seems like she won't sell it. I feel like I want to put a curse on the comic books and be like, you can't sell these. You just got to hand these down to the next line over and over till, the great grandkids have it and it's worth a bunch of money and you still can't sell it then because I cursed them, obviously.
So they don't even know what paper is anymore. What is this stuff?
Oh my God. When she touches those boxes, because they're sitting in the hallway right now because I got to bring them in here, I'm always just like, be gentle with those. Don't even open them. I'm like, don't open them. You're not ready for that yet. You're not ready for that yet.
I don't understand. So it's
gotta be like Bart Simpson, with the tweezers and the candle and slowly turn the pages. By the way, Joe was watching, said Guy Gardner is awesome in Justice League International, which
yes,
I don't hate Guy Gardner.
Anything that Kevin Maguire does, like his art, like he's so good with expressions. I think that anything that he's done with Guy Gardner is really the best because he really knows how to bring out that character.
I also I like Kyle Rayner because he was an artist, and like if you see like a lot of his what do they call when they make the objects from their rings?
Like his projections and
the
stuff.
Projections, like Hal Jordan's were like your classy kooky ones, right? Like a big fist that came out of nowhere and punched you in the face. But Kyle would make like some wild looking artistic, like he'd be like on a unicorn or something, right? He'd be like, here's this crazy ass thing I want to put myself. And then you have Jon Stewart, who had made like the really technical like weapons and stuff, right? Because he was military, right?
Yeah.
And then Guy Gardner, I don't remember what he made. Honestly, I have no clue. I don't remember.
He's the class clown of the 4.
Oh, I get it.
Yeah.
The last Green Lantern, I keep going back to Green Lantern because I love Green Lantern stuff. The last Green Lantern I read that I really liked was Blackest Night. And that's
so good.
That was so good. But then Brightest Day was like garbage, It wasn't garbage. It was not as good.
I feel like it's one of those things, like, it's okay for things to be dark. And Marvel and DC have, especially DC. DC has a much harder time about dark than Marvel does. They just have always, it's just always been like that historically, because DC's really been superhero stuff.
Mm-hmm.
Other than Batman, obviously, but like any of your Green Lantern, Superman, Flash, like a lot of those kind of storylines, there was less so now, but historically there was always this need for things to kind of come back up. And I loved how dark Blackest Night got. I really loved when they introduced all the other different color core, like the Red Lanterns and the Indigo Lanterns and the Yellow Lanterns, and also it was super interesting to me. Yeah, and in fact, I have the big Blackest Night hardcover, like the slipcase hardcover, because I loved that book so much. It was after that, I was kind of like, what are you doing, guys? Like, I get it, I get why, but
yeah, it's all. I've tried less to be like, what are these guys up to? But now I'm just like, just enjoy the comic. Like, I read a lot more indie comics these days than anything, just because I want to get like. I like Hellboy a lot. I read a lot of Mike Mignola comics, right? And I like Saga. Have you guys read Saga?
I'm only read the first couple issues. I need to catch up on it.
I think Jason, you would like Saga too.
Yeah,
when Fiona went digital, the collector community got very upset.
So what now?
When Fiona went digital, the collector community got very upset.
Sure. Well, she was trying to crank. I got the fat one with like the first 52 issues. And then they were like, we're going to take a break for X, and then we'll be back. And then I guess they just came back now. So I'm just like, I will wait for the next 52. Because they're going to close it out. 52 and then 52 and they're done. So I like the idea that they're like, we're not going to carry the story further than we have to. Which is one of the things I like about Hellboy comics. They're like one-shot, like small 5-issue comics that I can get, that I can read, and I know it's going to end.
They're all built around a graphic novel collection format. For a reason,
That's smart.
But it also, I think, has to do with Mignola's writing style, where he kind of knows that you can't write like a full arc that's got any sort of pacing to it, and he's got a very sort of gradual way he likes to write stories, and he can't really. Well, I mean, depending on the story, but I mean, he's doing like investigative, horror thrillers. So I mean, there's usually a lot of actions, sort of sprinkled in, but the way he writes, it benefits from having space to breathe. And that's, true for most comics, honestly, but I think he just sort of understands the medium well enough. And plus he's got this great setup that any comic writer would be, jealous of, that he can produce stuff that's all his own stuff and it's all in his own universe. And when he comes up with a new idea, he can write a new, 5-book arc and, just go about doing what he wants to do.
I always liked, because I like, I also like old school, like Lovecraft stories. So I always like that, like, it's not like fast paced. It's got this cool, like you said, like this mystery. And it's always just like a couple things happening. They're solving the puzzle. There's probably a small fight sequence in there somewhere. Story ends, right? Like I just read one where the mad scientist, there's a gorilla. He fights the gorilla, stops the mad scientist, saves a woman. Story's done. Right. And I'm just like, it was great. And I was just like, that wasn't that complicated, right? But they don't make comics like now. They feel like everybody wants like this wild, like it's like you get this wild. Like the last Batman I read was White. If you haven't read White Knight, it's amazing. Because basically Joker convinces Gotham that Batman's the bad guy, and you're like, this is trippy, and it's different. It's a whole other Bat multiverse basically. But then the Curse of the White Knight is just as good, and I'm looking forward to whatever they put out next, because it's kind of got that cool. It's got the Batman vibe to it without being too wild, which is what I guess. I don't know if I'm getting older and I just like that more. But I mean, if you don't want the same stuff over and over, I guess is my point. So
is Sean Gordon Murphy still doing the art on that?
Yeah, I mean, I think he writes it and draws it, right?
He is writing it too. He's one of my favorite comic book artists. I have a few pieces of his. He is amazing.
Dude, I would love to own an original from him.
Yeah.
He's got like this cool Batman. You're lucky. I mean, give me something.
And I've been collecting his stuff for a while, because now like it's insane.
Yeah, he got, once those stuff took off, he got really popular, right? Like, he has this cool. Like, I always love it when people don't draw Batman like the traditional, like Mignola's Gotham by Gaslight, I think it's called. It was awesome because you had this like old school Batman with a high collar. The only thing was missing was like one of those top hats, but he had like that cool, like like what is it, 1800s London like style going to him, right? I don't know what you call that, but and White Knight's got the same thing. He's got like the collar, he's got like the boots that go like past the knees, which is kind of cool and different. Like why is Batman wearing high rising boots like that? But it's kind of neat. It's a cool style.
I love Joker's look in that book a lot too.
Yeah, I mean, he took the time to make each character unique, which is what I like. They don't have the same, like all the dudes don't look the same, and all the women don't look the same. They all have their own unique looks to them. So I was like, I like that care. Joe said, "Have you read any punk rock Jesus stuff?" Oh wait, that's his first stuff that he did, right? The first stuff that
I think it's his first like his story stuff, because he did some stuff before that where his style didn't look like what we recognize as his style now. Oh no, what was before punk rock Jesus was that it's called something Joe. Why am I blanking on what it's called right now?
Yeah, maybe Joe will tell us. He's
called something Joe. That was before punk rock Jesus.
So I was going to ask you about your opinion on CGC stuff too, because I have a couple graded comic books, but then like I always get into like these discussions with my friends where I'm like, I just got New Mutants 87 finally after all these years. I was able to snag. Nice. It's pretty good. I would grade it at like a 6. But I'm not a CGC person. But I was gonna get it graded, and then my friend was like, I don't like grading. He doesn't like it because it clamshells the book and you can never read it again. But I have a friend who works for CBSC. I can't remember. It's like CGC's yeah, and he said they have a specific one that you can grade that's like a slipcase, so you can take it out if you want to, which doesn't feel like it gives it any more value if you do it that way. I feel like the value is in closing it.
Is the one that holds the most value.
The CGC?
I love that idea, but you just can't. Once you grade it, if you open it again, it shouldn't be able to.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's one thing if it's an authenticity. Some of those companies will do authenticities. That's completely different. Sure. But when you're looking at grading, CGC for comics is the gold standard. They're the ones. And look, I'm not saying anybody's better than anybody else. There's like a few different companies out there. But when it comes to money and what the general collector base trusts and will spend money on, it's CGC.
Yeah, that's what I thought.
So usually the number one reason you would get something slabbed is for value. So if you were to sell that raw copy now,
let me find it,
and you were to sell it after you got it slabbed, it would sell for way more slabbed, because then people know what they're buying is legit. They know that the grade is what you said it is. It's similar to like really old Magic cards. Like if you have a really high graded like Black Lotus, that's going to sell for a lot more than one that's not.
Like so, I'm never gonna take it out of here. Like
you're never gonna take it out. It doesn't hurt to get it slabbed.
Exactly. Like it's pretty pristine. So I was just like, and it took me years. Like I've been wanting this comic since I was like 14, I think. Like, but its value is so high. I'm like, I'm not going to spend hundreds of dollars on this.
It's gotten crazy expensive. Yeah. And what you can do too is like go on eBay and search the book with and without CGC and look at the price differences.
Oh yeah.
Even regular, like limited edition modern books, like a non-CGC one might be $30 or $40 and a CGC one might be like $250.
Right.
So, gotten a lot of my stuff CGC'd because most of the comics I collect are just things I like to read and look at.
Right.
I have bought CGC books before. Like I was collecting them for a while, first appearances and stuff from X-Men. I ended up selling them because they take up too much space, and that's just not what I collect. So I just moved away from it. It also keeps the book in good condition because it's slabbed.
I mean, I usually have the other stuff I have CGC'd. I usually have an extra copy, so I can read it. And then most of the other stuff I have done is signed. So like I have Batman 608, Jim Lee signed, and the writer signed it. I would love if I can get Rob Liefeld to sign this. I don't know Rob personally though. So maybe I'll run into him at a show. And then
he does lots of shows, and he'll sign stuff. I'm pretty sure you just have to pay for it.
I mean, I don't mind paying for it. It's expected, Joe said the comic you might be thinking of is Joe the Barbarian with Grant Morrison.
That was before Punk Rock Jesus.
Okay. I'm trying to think of other questions I had for you, but I had a magic question earlier. Damn it. This is what happens when you don't write stuff down. This is why I never write it down. It's so stupid. That's what I was telling you. I'm so new to this still. Like, I just kind of wing it. Nah, it'll come to me. Don't worry about it. Jason, did you have any other questions? I know you're not a big comic book collector, but we've been talking comics this whole time. We're gonna make Jason a comic book collector. That's what's gonna happen.
I do all kinds of stuff. I play video games. Whatever nerdy things you like, Jason, I probably also like that.
What video game are you playing right now? Because I know Jason mentioned a game the other night called what were you playing the other night? I had to look it up because I'd never heard of it.
It's called Candy Crush Saga. And
come on.
Fantastic. It's got bright colors. It's just lovely.
Jason's secretly a 65-year-old woman, and we never knew.
Yeah.
Dude, I started playing. My friends have been playing Wordle for fucking weeks, and I've been ignoring it for weeks. I've just been like, I'm not playing this goddamn game. This is gonna stress me out. So I played it for the first time yesterday, just to be like, let's give it a whirl. And I did okay, but I was just like, all right, well, I got one. Then I played again this morning because the thing is also I don't like playing under pressure. Like, it's hard to play with a kid in the house where she's like, you can't concentrate on what the word is if your toddler's yelling in your ear. So today I had time to play again, so I played again. And I told my friends, I was like, I probably won't be able to play the rest of the week because you got to really sit down and think because I'm not like I'm not like an encyclopedia of words here. So it's like, I will definitely stress myself out. Like today's word really stressed me out because I was just like, damn it, it's stupid. Joe knows I posted in the group. I was like, it's stupid.
I haven't played it, but I know how it works. I have multiple friends who play it, and they explained it to me.
That game is giving me anxiety when I see it online now. Because in the groups I'm in, all I keep seeing is the Wordle. Everyone's posting their scores, and I just see this stupid green grid going by over and over and over, and I'm just like, gonna block this thread for a little bit. I'll be back. Candy Crush was another one of those games when I first came out. I played that too long. I don't put games on my phone because I will sit there staring at my phone for hours.
Yeah, I've never actually played Candy Crush. My wife had it on her phone for a while and was still playing it so long that I just try to stay away from casual games as a general preference.
Yeah.
But it's because I guess when I try to set aside time to play video games, I like the video games to have a certain sort of level of interactive, immersion.
You and I were talking about playing some Destiny at some point.
Yeah, and the games that I just finished Far Cry 6, and I just started Dying Light 2.
That's it, Dying Light.
Which Far Cry 6 was great, and Dying Light 2 has been exceptional so far. I mean, it's Dying Light 1 was one of my favorite games, that I've ever played, really, because it is so open world and it has. So many unique characteristics to it. The way you move around the world, the way the zombies are always trying to, get in your way. But it's still got a lot of scavenging built into it. So it's very RPG-ish at the same time, even though it's a zombie apocalypse. So it's like a horror game crossed with an RPG in lots of ways. And it just makes it very entertaining. Every minute you're playing it has something to offer. And that's not something you can get from every kind of game out there.
Dude, you got to get my friend has a VR headset, and I can't remember the game, but he has a zombie VR game in there. It's fucking scary. Like,
nope.
Can be.
Nope. I'm like you, right? I played it, and you basically stand in the middle of the room, and it looks like a real factory. The first level is like this factory, and these zombies are coming through random doors. It looks so fucking real, and you just gotta shoot them, right? And if they get too close, it's very real looking. And I always joked with one of my friends because all of us played it and your friends can watch you on the screen so they see what you're looking at, right? So as you're looking around, they see everything on the screen. And, I'm flinching and shooting because I'm like, this fucking thing is getting too close. Whereas I had this one friend who's just stone cold killer. He's just shooting things, zero flinch. And I'm like, are you a serial killer? Because I know it's a video game, but at least can your brain cause you to be a little scared? What's happening right now? But then it takes you to a field, and I could hear this giant zombie. It was huge, man. I just took the glasses off. I was like, I was like, I'm not fighting that thing. It looks too scary.
I'll fight 'cause I'm out. It's too much.
Dude, it was 10 feet tall and looked so. Your brain, I feel like with VR stuff. Like some people play it and like they just see the VR game and they're like, it's a game. But I feel like some people see, like, my imagination makes that look way too real. Like he had a space one. He's got the what do you call it? The watchtower, so you know if you're gonna hit the grid wall or something like that. And even with that, like he had this one VR thing that was like space, and the floor looked like just like it looked like you're floating in space, like forever. And at about 10 minutes into it, my knees got real wobbly, and I had to like take a knee on the floor because I was like, whoa, I'm getting dizzy. Because everywhere I looked was just space, and I couldn't figure out. And then your brain, it no longer sees the objects that it needs to see, right? And your brain's like tripping balls.
You couldn't orient yourself. Yeah.
Yeah. So I was like, I like VR games, but I also don't like VR games because of that. You know, like but you never told us. I cut you off.
I'm more of a franchise person. I'm actually right now. I went back to play Red Dead Redemption because I never played that.
I've been playing the second one online with some friends occasionally.
Yeah. So I just went back. I had watched it played. I knew I would like it. I just never played it myself. So I just picked it up cheap online. I don't have a lot of time to game, unfortunately, but I tend to be a franchise person. I tend to like RPGs. So my favorite franchises are Witcher, Fallout, Dragon Age, Mass Effect.
Oh, Mass Effect, yeah.
Yeah, I love the Fable original trilogy. I have some hope for the new game because they had a couple misstep games in there.
Did you say Witcher?
Witcher, yeah.
Yeah.
That's one of my favorites. So I also like Assassin's Creed, which isn't an RPG, but I've been playing that since like the very first game.
It's become more like RPG.
Can you swim in that game yet? I always piss me off when I hit the water, I would die. And I'm like, what kind of? Okay. I was always like the
great way to get away from people chasing you.
Yeah, I just remember the first one where I died in the water once, and I was like, "What? What? This guy can't swim?" Like, then I was like, maybe he's carrying too many weapons. You know, he's heavy.
He's heavy. Yeah, and Skyrim, anything Skyrim.
I've never played Skyrim. It seems like I would enjoy it. I definitely will never play. What's the game where if you die, it reboots you back to the start?
And that's like several genres of.
No, it's on PS4. I think it's only a Sony game, and then they made a new version, another similar version of it with the dude with the witch hunter looking guy. Help me out, Joe. You play a lot of video games. Why can't
I don't do a lot of PlayStation, so I'm not sure.
So I never invested in a PS system at all. I had 1 and 2 when I was younger, but the newer stuff I was by then I was on Xbox. But I have a friend who works at Sony who was like, I'm gonna send you a PS4, and I'm like, well, it's just gonna sit here, man. I don't have time to play games. And I started playing Spider-Man on there for the first time, which is a fantastic. If you get a PS4 or PS5, Dark Souls is the game I'm thinking of, by the way.
Oh, yeah. Okay. Yeah, I wouldn't have got that.
That game is stressful as fuck. Like I did okay playing it at my friend's house, but I was like, how? It reminded me of remember Ghosts and Ghouls, I think was the game where you're like King Arthur running on Nintendo, and if you got hit, like your armor would come off first, and you got hit again, you're just dead. At a higher level. Oh, Bloodborne's the other game I'm thinking of. Thanks, Joe. Joe, by the way, plays a lot more video games than I do, and I'm super jealous. I don't know how he does it with a toddler in the house.
I love playing. It's just a time thing, which really sucks. But yeah, if you don't want to play Skyrim, because wave goodbye to your life for a year if you play Skyrim.
So that's why I didn't play it. I had my friends were like, "Don't start that game because you're gonna get." It's the same reason I never really got into World of Warcraft. I played World of Warcraft for like 3 days, and then I was like, I'm gonna play this too long. And my friends have been trying to get me to play
for that exact reason. My boyfriend plays WoW, and he's entirely too obsessed and is not getting his work done. I'm like, I see pages on your desk, sir, that you need to be working on.
She just comes out of nowhere. She's like, get back to work, motherfucker. Like, my friends have been trying to get me to play Final Fantasy 14. I've tried now. If I might try again later tonight. I told him I was like, I could play like a little bit here and there on a weekend, but it's like, it's time consuming, right? And I don't like games where I'm like running around.
Yeah.
Collecting
every
shit.
MMO out there is a mistake. If your time has value, Skyrim is actually the better option compared to an MMO, because at least with Skyrim you're doing quests that are only a certain size, and you can save the game. You're kind of running out of time. With an MMO, especially if you're playing with friends, you're locked into what you're doing, and it
Yeah.
requires a certain time investment to get anything accomplished at all. And
Right.
it's terrible. There is no way to do MMOs and stay living a life and employed and all of that. I mean,
you're never done. Like you're never completely done with it. I used to play Final Fantasy 11 when I was in college, and I played it for a couple of years. And when I stopped, I'm like, I'm never going back, because you're playing with other humans, so you have this like accountability and responsibility.
Yeah.
And I remember we would play for 14 hours.
Wow. I mean,
Final Fantasy 11 is incredibly punishing. It's like EverQuest level of punishing. It's like if you die, you lose experience, you go down a level.
God.
It's really, really ridiculous. So, never again.
I mean, we had a friend growing up who dropped out of college because he played EverQuest all the time, and he wouldn't go to, so I didn't go to the same school as them, but I remember I was hanging out with him once, and he was sitting there playing EverQuest, and his roommates were like, hey man, are you going to go to class? And he's like, yeah, I'll go to class. And we left, and when we came back, he had moved from his dorm to the dorm across the hallway, because we traced the cable over there. He had left the room to go buy lunch because there were a bunch of Taco Bell wrappers on the floor. He did not go to class, and he was still playing EverQuest. And as a couple months went by from there, he failed all. He was a super smart dude, and I think now he does IT work for a local college. But like, he probably could have been doing more if he had actually finished. Right? I don't know, who's to say, but he did drop out. He was just like, he had no interest in the classes, and but like I said, he was really smart. But that game like he just played it for like a year straight after that, and then eventually was like done with it, and then went back. And then it's just like he just transitioned like nothing ever happened. And I was just like, I never touched that game. Just watching that, I was like, it's like a drug, man.
Yeah,
they can be. They encourage that.
Joe said there was a kid in his dorm who almost failed everything because of Pokemon emulators.
No, there's no long-term justification for that, and you should definitely make your game and move somewhere new, and just don't ever admit to that. That
friend is probably Joe. Tell us it's you, Joe. Come on.
I know a guy who
played.
That's how it is, right?
I mean, so Destiny is one of those games. What's that?
I said, asking for a friend.
Yeah.
That's how it always is.
I mean, the reason I played... So Destiny is one of these games I play because my friend... I'm actually not bad at it. I'm really not that video game guy. I'm like, if I'm good at something, I'll stick to that game. And Destiny is one of those games I can play with my friends for like an hour, like when I do join, and then just call it, right? There's no like... The only stressful stuff for me in that game is when they want to do like a raid. But my friends are really good at saying, we're going to play this day and that day for this hour to this hour. So at least I know what I'm getting into, and I'm not going to be playing for like you said, 14 hours, right? Like, I'm not going to dedicate. I'll be like, I'll give you guys 2 hours on a Friday night. But I had a talk with them where I was like, just keep in mind that means it's 2 hours worth of work I'm not doing.
Yeah.
Because I'm playing this game. So if at any point you guys are acting like shitbags to me, I'm just going to leave, because I got better things to do. But I want to hang with my friends. I don't want to be, because they work day shifts, whereas I work night shifts, right? So like most of artists do work at night too. So
yeah, I don't like multiplayer. I don't like playing with other people. For me, when I play video games, that's my time for myself. So after the MMO thing, I just don't. I haven't done any multiplayer or anything.
That's actually a good way to look at it.
Huh?
That's a good way to like look at things and play the games that you can. Because then you can play at your own pace. You can play at your own timestamp.
Like I even played Tom Clancy's The Division, which is designed. You can play it single player, but it's designed to play multiplayer. It's kind of a RPG shooter, which is another. I like shooters sometimes too. I didn't want to play with anybody else. I played by myself. It was really hard.
Because don't you have to like control the whole team?
You have to do it all by yourself.
No,
so I just did it by myself. It took me a while because I remember one like side quest in particular that took me like 25 tries because I had to because you're managing where everybody is and their guns and where they come from. And so it was really hard, but it ended up being a really enjoyable game for me. So I was glad because I looked online. I'm like, can I play this by myself? It says, yes, you can. It's just harder. Okay, well, I'm going to do it anyway. I beat the game. It was fine. But yeah, I'm just not a fan of, I don't know, I feel like I guess I deal with people all day.
Mm-hmm.
So
Yeah.
I just, you know?
There is a point, there's always a tension point in the games with my friends where, you know, it's either really late and we're tired and you fuck up. It's usually me. There's a couple of people that fall asleep. We've had a friend just fall asleep in the middle of the thing. Like, we're all trying to talk to him, and he's like, yeah, I fell asleep. It's like, we should stop playing. If you're falling asleep, that means you're tired. We should call it. And, you know, there's a point where I'd be like, I got a headache. I don't want to play anymore. Because you know, sometimes you do the same thing over and over, and it's like, you have to be like, I was trying to explain to my wife one day, like, with the raids, you have to be like, you have to be like perfect with your moves, right? And if you make like one dumb move and you're dead, and then your five friends are trying to carry this game now, and you're not there for like 30 seconds, that's a long time for you to be gone. And if they're trying to either get you back into the game or wait 30 seconds so you come back and manage now the thing you're supposed to manage on top of the thing they're supposed to manage, and you're like, I don't need this. So I haven't done the raid with them in a while because I'm just like, no. Because I'm actually enjoying just working on art at night and going to bed happy. You know, I have been focusing more on shows and stuff too. And I wanted to get back to the magic talk because I have been trying to get some magic work. I have sent out stuff to multiple art directors. So we'll see. Like, maybe someday I'll be like Jason. I'll paint something traditional and sell it for buku bucks. I have not tracked your Facebook since yesterday, but last I checked, you're up there on that auction.
Oh, the Kamigawa piece that I got up there, right? Yeah, that one's it's a pretty cool card, honestly, and it was one of those pieces where I actually got to be really, really creative. You know, most of the time with magic art, you're kind of like you're either pulling from lore or, you know, the history of the game and previous designs, or you're pulling from a very specific, you know, newer style guide to where you're not actually doing much real design work, which is, it can be a lot of fun. I mean, sometimes, you know, in art that can really benefit you because you're just like, you know, well, this is already a great design. I'll just use this. And now all I do is figure out the composition and the silhouettes and all that. But, you know, for me, I really, really get more into a project when I'm doing something from the ground up completely. You know, designing characters is one of my specialties. So it's kind of like, you know, if I don't get to do that in magic art, which I don't often get to do, it feels like I'm doing art with my, you know, one of my arms tied behind my back. So with that piece, I was able to really design it because it was it's like a very, very powerful spirit in Kamigawa, where they have 5 of them, where it's just one for each color. And so they're kind of almost deity level spirits, but they also came with like very, very light instructions as far as what we needed to look like. Like the one sort of, you know, similar visual factor for all of them is that they've got multiple arms, and that was it. And they're like, get surrealist and weird with it. And, you know, whatever you want to do, you know, we're pretty sure it'll work. And so the piece came out really good, and I was really happy to work on it. Yeah, it was super fun.
Yeah, it was.
And always the pieces that sell for more too, because people can kind of tell you had a good time, you know, doing the job.
It doesn't look like every other magic art that's been done before it, right? It's got a cool, unique look to it. It's got a cool character design to it. I love the multiple arms.
I was just looking to see where it was at right now. It's 6, I guess, but it doesn't matter till the end, really.
Yeah, that's one thing I've learned is the way the magic art collecting community works, at any rate, and that is pretty much my only experience with original art collectors at this point is really just magic collectors. I mean, I've had collectors that have been, you know, fans of mine that I've built relationships with over the years, but the kind of level of work that I'm doing with magic is totally different than what I've really done for those people. So I mean, yeah, it's definitely one of those things where you try to accommodate where you can, but I mean, the magic collector community is much more sort of cohesive, so you can learn a lot about, you know, what their preferences are a lot easier than other people.
Yeah, it's a lot smaller group, and the age range is tighter. Yeah. Like with comic art collectors, the age range is huge because comics have been around for so much longer. But
Exactly.
Yeah, the most I ever spent on a piece of art was the piece I got from Jason. That's the most I've ever spent.
From Angle?
Yeah.
Shake your fist at him. No, I'm just kidding.
That was my first Planeswalker, actually. So it was one of those pieces that usually goes for a little more.
I mean, a Planeswalker is awesome to own, right? An original Planeswalker is. It'd be cool to be like.
Tyler Walpole's first Planeswalker just recently too, didn't you?
Mm-hmm.
Dang, you're just on top of that. That's awesome.
Yeah, it's funny because when Jason first showed the piece, it's Kaya, who's one of my favorite Planeswalkers anyway. Okay. Showed the piece, like, oh, I love this piece. I'm like, I think I was like messaging Mark or something, and Mark's like, oh, he's keeping it. It's like, oh man, like this is like one of my favorite pieces ever. And then I think a week later, a few days later, he's like, oh, he's taking offers on it. So I was like, well, okay, how much do I have to offer here? And so it worked out. I was really excited, really excited to be able to bring her home. And I always love when you have, this is one of the things as a collector that is really great, is when you have the art day, when you open a piece of art and it's even better looking than you thought it was going to be. Mm-hmm. And this was one of those pieces. Art usually looks better in person anyway.
Oh yeah.
But this was one of those, like, I was looking at, because there's so much detail, I really enjoyed. Yeah.
That's why I did it a little bit larger too. It's one of the largest pieces I've done, which is not super large compared to other artists either, by the way. 18 by 24 is pretty normal size for some of the guys.
That's pretty big though. That's poster size.
It's honestly, it's a little bigger than a lot of the collectors seem to prefer.
Oh, okay.
But I knew with a Planeswalker, it's vertical format, so the detail needs are a little higher because only half of it is going to be really easily visible on the card. So I could do it smaller, but the level of detail that I knew I wanted to achieve with it just wasn't going to be doable. So I ended up doing it as one of my first big pieces, which was really, really fun. Man, it takes longer to do though. Wow.
Sure.
It's
that's
incredible.
That's a big piece.
Something that's like 12 by 16 and something that's 18 by 24. It's not like an extra couple of days, man. It's like, 2 or 3 times the time investment. It's crazy.
Yeah. Oh, absolutely. Yeah. I think that one of the mistakes that some artists make is they try to go bigger, but then the detail's not there.
Yeah.
If you're going to go bigger, you need to put in, unless that's your style, obviously, but if you're going to scale up, you have to keep the quality the same. If you're not going to do that, you might as well do it smaller.
Right.
But,
yeah. But the quality on this piece was incredible. I can tell you put a ton of time into it.
Oh, thanks. Yeah. That's one of the reasons I was going to hold on to it initially.
Yeah. Are you having regrets right now? Is that what's happening live?
No, not really. I mean, the truth is, there's a few collectors that I know that I've sold pieces to over the 2 years, I guess I've been doing this. But it's kind of nice to have, a piece like that in the collection of a recognized collector that I, have a relationship with. And, it's much better than selling it, just to some random guy who liked the piece, years from now.
Yeah.
Or bringing it to a show and selling it to some guy who I'll never see again. And, it's like, I'd rather have it in the community, in the hands of somebody who knows what they're doing and knows how to keep art and can appreciate it fully, rather than just some rando who offered me, thousands of dollars more than the asking price. And I felt like I had to sell it to him at that point,
right.
Which is what would have happened, honestly, if I had held on to it. So, no, I'm very glad that you picked it up from me, because I know at least it's in good hands.
I mean, that's
one of my very favorite pieces. Very, very happy to have her. So
yeah,
that's awesome. I mean, it's
Planeswalker that I ever bought.
Really?
So, yeah, that was my first.
I mean, I think that's cool, because getting a Planeswalker from any artist in the Magic community, I think would be super hard. Like, I don't have the money for that level.
Could be, that's
I don't have the money for that level of piece, right? Like, I think the most expensive piece on my wall is it's right up here. It's a Scott Fisher, which if I
most
you
of
can
his
see
stuff
it.
Pretty
I own both skulls from his series.
Oh, you got some of the skulls from? Was that from?
This is the first one in the series in Eluxcon, and this is from this last year's second one, and then. Nice. So those are probably the most expensive pieces I own technically. And then I love Nightcrawler. If you can see that If you got Nightcrawler pieces, send them my way. I'll buy them all. Like, this is Miles.
My favorite X-Men.
Mine
my
too.
Favorite X-Men character.
So this is Miles Wool. If you guys don't know Miles Wool, you should definitely look him up. He's fucking talented as hell. And then you could see some of the originals here. There's Eli. There's Jeremy Wilson. This is Brianna was at AluxCon. She did artwork on pennies, which is the smallest piece of artwork I own, which is amazing. This is fucking amazing. It's hard to see because you gotta like you said, you gotta see it in person. You gotta really I don't have any Jasons on this wall yet. Someday I'll buy a Jason piece.
Well, I'm pretty expensive already, so you might.
Apparently, you're very, very high quality.
I'm extremely famous, so I mean, sorry, man. I like you, but I don't really like that much, you know.
Oh, that's good to know. Good to know. I mean, you're famous right where you need to be, so that's the, every time someone's like, "You're famous," to me, I'm like, "Yeah, in small circles," and that's fine.
Right. Yeah. It's always the caveat. They're like, "Oh, I tell people I'm an artist," and they're like, "Oh, yeah. Do I know your work?" And I'm like, "No,
dude. I've only had one time here in Chicago. I was hanging out with some friends before the pandemic, and we went to this what's that brewery called? It doesn't matter. We were going to this brewery out here, and these 4 individuals came out of the brewery, and they were like, "Hey, you're AllenPanakal," and I'm just like, "How the fuck do these guys know my name?" Like, I was like, yes.
You're like, are you the IRS?
Yeah, exactly, right? I was just like, and I haven't started drinking yet, right? So I'm just stone cold sober and just like, what? And they were like, we bought a bunch of your work at Gen Con, man. It's all hanging on our wall and stuff. And I'm just like, oh, shit. And my friends are all like, you have fans. And I was just like, holy shit, yes, I do. And then they came back in to have drinks with me, which is kind of a cool feeling when you meet people. So like at shows, like you were saying, like it's cool that Tatiana owns your piece because it's somebody you know and you can like talk to. It's not some random person. I feel like the people that have bought, I talked to a lot of people that buy my artwork, but the people that have bought my bigger pieces, I'm actually like really good friends with a lot of them now too. Which is on one hand, it's like they'll keep like supporting me as an artist, and a lot of them have bought multiple pieces from me. And on the other hand, it's cool to be like, talk to those people at a show and be like, how's it going? Here's the cool new stuff I've got. Like the people that were like waiting for my book to come out, right? Who came back to my booths last year during shows to be like, hey, is that book finally out? I'd like to buy it. And you're like, oh, cool. You remembered me. Thank you. And if you remember them, it's even better because you're like, oh yeah, we had this cool conversation about this stuff. Hopefully you're not remembering them in a bad light, Get the fuck away from my booth. I have said that to multiple people, by the way, because if you're rude to me, I'll be rude back to you. Anyone who knows me knows I don't put up with your bullshit. If you're not going to be kind, then I don't have time for that.
Yeah, it's rare, but you do at conventions occasionally run into people who have it gives you the impression that they think of you as being someone in the service business.
Yeah.
And when you're an artist selling your own products rather than like at a convention, if you're at a retail style booth and you're just selling, t-shirts or something, then your job is then more service business oriented. And, eating shit is something that you're expected to do because you're being paid to be there. When you're an artist repping your own work to fans, half the reason we're there is to make connections with people. The making money at a show is it's, for me, it's secondary. For a lot of guys, it's not, but it's only part of the equation no matter what. It's not the same issue. And when people walk into the art show and start hassling artists, it's like, no, man, that's the wrong place for this. Like you're clearly not here for the right reasons. So get the fuck out. Like,
yeah, it's you've heard me say it before. I always say, make the art because you love making art and everything else is secondary to that. So like, I love talking to people about art and my work or their work. And, like we talked about comics for like 30 minutes, I think. I love that shit. Like that's the kind of stuff I enjoy. But I've had people come to my booth I've had people say, it goes from a different range. I've had people say the stuff is overpriced, which is a whole different discussion where I'm just like, don't buy it then. And then I've had people
they weren't going to buy it. If they complain about price, they weren't going to buy it anyway.
Right.
And I've had people who can't associate with it. So they're like, I've had people like, it's weird. I don't like it. It's like, okay. I'm not going to try to convince you why you should like it. If it doesn't speak to you, it doesn't speak to you. And that goes for me myself as well. I've seen art at shows where I'm just like, it's cool. I don't dig it. It's not my thing. But I'm not going to say that to the artist because that's fucking rude. You know, like they put a lot of time and energy into that thing. Just because I don't sync with it doesn't mean I have any right to tell them, like, this is not doing it for me, man. Try again. You know, like people should be punched when they say stuff like that to people. You know, like, but people have been at shows with me where I'm just like, there's this classic story. I've said it over and over once, but there was a guy at Gen Con one year walked by and said my prices were too high. And I said, well, then my product's not for you. And he was shocked. And he didn't buy anything initially, walked away. This is a very rare case of somebody who came back and bought something. Came by a second time. I had sold one of the giant pieces. And he was like, oh, somebody bought that? And I said, yeah, my prices weren't too high for them.
Wow.
And then he came by a third time and he bought something for me. And as he was buying it, I looked at him and said, you sure my prices aren't too high for you? Because in my head, I was like, I don't care if you don't buy anything. I'm trying to make a point. Don't say that shit to anybody. It's rude.
No.
Like, I worked hard to make, and that comes down to like them thinking, oh, they're looking at it like a product, or like, oh, this thing doesn't cost that much to make. Sure. But the art took time. There's a perceived value of how much time and energy I put into this thing. And now you're going to take it home with you and either hang it on your wall or make a kite out of it. I don't know, you know, like whatever you plan on doing with it. But it's like, there's a value that I put on it because of my time and energy. Like, yeah, a print print can cost anywhere between $1 to $10 to produce, like, you know, but you know that I'm obviously going to mark it up because I'm in the business of selling you art. That's my job. Like, if I sold it to you for the exact cost I paid for it, it would sell, but it doesn't pay the, you know, my goodwill doesn't pay the piper, as you would say, you know, like, so.
And I feel like there's a flip side to that conversation that is appropriate. Like, if somebody comes up to me at a show and says, hey, I really like this work, but I can't afford it. Do you have anything I can afford? That's a completely different conversation.
That is a totally different way to approach it, and a much like kinder way, right? And that's why, like, on my booth, I purposely try to have what I call the price framing, where I have the high tier items, and I'm working on. I have some low tier. The lowest tier item I have now are pins, but I've been trying to make smaller pieces of art, like sketchbooks and notebooks, and I'm actually working on dice, which haven't happened yet, but it's a small ticket item that most people can afford, so they can at least take something away. And that's me thinking ahead of the game, because I've been in that person's shoes where I'm like, I really want art from this artist, but I can't spend $100, right?
Yeah.
So like what you said is the way you approach it.
Yeah. Yeah. So I'm working on my site now, adding, like I mentioned earlier, the one-on-one APs. Those are obviously a lot cheaper than traditional art. And then I'm also starting to get into variant comics and stuff with some of my artists. So I have comic books to sell. We're going to be doing prints and stuff. So people can come on my website and not have to spend hundreds of dollars. If they just like the artist, they can spend, $25 or $50 or something.
And honestly, I think sometimes those variant comics covers look better than the actual original comics to me. Like I go out of my way to find the variants a lot. I don't collect. I've seen people buy like all 12 variants, which is a level of collecting I'm kind of jealous of, because I'm like, that's cool. You just bought all 12 variants.
It's also like borderline obsessive compulsive though. Yes. After a while, like if you appreciate the art on all 12 of them, that's one thing. But if you're just doing it to have them all,
that's crazy. Exactly.
The value is be up there when there's 12 of them.
Right.
It's just how that works.
I usually am like, who did the covers? I would just want to buy the cover by artists, C or D or E or whatever, and I just go get that.
I mean, sometimes the art is a lot better because on variant covers, a lot of times they'll take more risks. They'll be more artistic or graphic in style because it's not the main cover that's going to be everywhere and sort of representing the book in a normal way. They can get weird with it, and sometimes the results of that kind of approach are
and some of the stores only get like, I've called my locals and they'd be like, we didn't get that variant, and then you're like on the hunt for a specific one, right? Like when Batman, have you read I think it's called Three Jokers? If you guys haven't read Batman Three Jokers, man, it's fucking like I said, I quit reading them. So. I feel like I gotta buy them for you guys.
Me actually.
It's so good. It's basically there's I don't want to give it away. It's that good. But they did these variant covers, which either you can get the Joker faces or you can get the heroes. So you can get Batman, Nightwing, and then the other. I don't want to give it away, but I had to like really look for specific variants.
Jason Fabok do that book? Was it Jason Fabok's art? I feel like he at least did the covers for that because it sounds really familiar.
I don't remember, honestly. Joe said he's got a friend who's buying every Spawn variant cover right now. That's a lot of variants.
There are people who do it, but
yeah, cool. Kudos to you, man. But at some point, you got to look at yourself and be like, why? Like again, if you said, if you love every artist on the variant, cool. If you're buying it just for the sake of completing a collection, then you're wasting your money.
Right.
And Joe is one of these guys.
Cool about the comic book variants too is that now there's a lot of store variants.
Yeah.
So a lot of times those have really great art because the store will pay the artist their rate.
Yeah.
Versus whatever the big companies will pay you, because you can have whatever your rate is, but if you go to the big companies, they're not usually going to pay you whatever your rate is. Versus if you go to the comic shop or the variants I'm doing, I just ask them, what's your rate?
Mm-hmm.
And I'm paying that.
Yeah, Jason Fabok on Great Jokers. You're right.
Okay.
Good job. I never would have remembered that name.
I've known him for a long time.
Well, damn, get my comics signed. I'm just kidding.
Yeah, like I said, I've been working in the comic industry for over 20 years. I know a lot of it.
Can you give Rob Liefeld a call for me and get this New Mutant signed? That's the only reason it's not CGC yet. Huh?
My boyfriend has his phone number, but I shouldn't. My boyfriend's worked with him before.
We're going to talk after the show.
One of my artists used to live next door to him.
He seems, people give Rob Liefeld a lot of flack. I like, I've been on, where people joke about him not drawing hands and feet, and people give him shit about his style. But I'm like, his style came out at a time where we needed some different styles out there. And I feel like it was one of those, I remember like saving my allowance to get that X-Force #1, because I was just like, it was such a unique style to me. I mean, I don't, I like a lot of artists, and Liefeld's not on my top 10, but I still liked his take on his character designs. They were, different for the time. It was like when I first saw, like Humberto Ramos, or Joe Madura, who used to draw like the big hands, right? And the big feet. Mm-hmm. And people were like, this is fucking weird. I'm like, it's cool. He's drawing like Joe Mad was drawing like a tagger. He was essentially drawing graffiti art, essentially.
Yep.
And then, which really spoke to me as a graffiti guy. And I think people like that it's cool, but Liefeld has had some of those duds, like that Captain America cover, but
the thing is, everybody does. When you're doing art, comic book art is production art, magic art is production art. When you're on a timeline, you have to get it done. It's got to be done by X date, and you don't care what it looks like. Right. Everybody has pieces that just aren't their favorite or other people's favorites. The thing about Rob is that Rob has always had a passion for comics. Even when comics lulled for a while there. The first time I ever met Rob at a show was in LA. And I'm just walking down the aisle in Artist Alley, and he just jumps out right in front of me and introduces himself to me, and asks if I want to buy art and stuff, and that's the kind of person Rob is. Yeah. And the thing is, the technicalities of the comic book art are secondary. Rob has always pushed the medium. He's always pushed the characters and stuff, and that's been a service to the industry, because comic books lulled for quite a long time. They still don't sell anywhere near like they used to sell in the 90s, but there was a period of time where it's like, oh, can we keep doing comic books? And Rob's always been a great cheerleader for the medium. And so anybody who complains about the technicalities of his artwork needs to remember that. He's brought us some amazing characters. I'm a huge Deadpool fan. He's one of my favorite characters.
Yeah. People forget that we wouldn't have Deadpool if it wasn't for that guy, Yeah,
exactly. So it's... and obviously Rob's gotten way, way popular again post-Deadpool movies. But Rob never let that energy go. He's always been that cheerleader, and I think people need to remember that about him.
Yeah, I mean, like, I still remember when I picked up that X-Force, and it, like, had, like, it came bagged with all this cool stuff, and I was was like, do I want to open this bag? And then I bought 2 of them because I kept one sealed, right? Because that's the level of collecting I was doing at that age. So I had to save up for 2 issues, and I remember my dad was even like, "What the hell are you doing? Just buy one." You know, I'm like, "Relax, bro. We're taking 2 home today." You know, like, but yeah, it was like he had that cool. Like I remember, like he had like just little touches, right? Like all the extra pouches on the characters, he had like this cool like I don't want to call it like scribble style, but you could see like the little markings, like the extra markings, you know. And I thought that was kind of neat because sometimes people like erase those out. He was just like, I'm just gonna leave them there because
a lot of that you started seeing in art after Todd McFarlane's run on Spider-Man.
Yeah,
Todd invented the extra noodling in comics, and you can tell who picked that stuff up from him.
Oh my God, McFarlane is a level of crazy where I'm just like, nope. Like I have that Spider-Man #1 with all the webbing, and you like the details on the webbing alone. You're like, this guy is something different. I actually have that Batman that he did too with the crazy. I have the black and white right there. So every once, McFarlane's is definitely one of my favorites. I would love to. I tried to meet that dude at Dallas once. He was so busy. I was like, not gonna happen. Joe was asking if you ever been to Heroes Con, which is his local in Charlotte.
I have not been to Heroes. I'm very familiar with the show. I mean, I just moved out to Colorado from California, so I just had never made it to Heroes. It's on the list, but it was always, I think it was always too close to San Diego. I feel like it was, yeah.
I've been thinking about doing that show, but like San Diego is back this year, so I have a booth there with the Lemons, so I'll probably be at San Diego this year.
Yeah, I think you're right by us.
Am I? So I'm like right across from Mignola.
Yeah, you're on the wall, right?
Yeah,
right,
we're on the wall.
You're on the wall.
Yeah. But like so when you walk into door G, there's
is Mignola is he with Jeff Darrow and
he always has somebody different in the corner.
Okay, so we're right. We actually, my friend who owns our booth, we own that booth too. I'm the booth right behind it. I'm in the Big Wow booth.
Oh,
I'm not usually there. I'm all over. That's where I'm based out of.
That's probably why I've never seen you there. I'm there. I always have to give Mignola a hard time because that dude never remembers my name, and I'm like, dude, I'm right across from you, like all show.
It's like that. He probably doesn't remember me, and I've probably met him 20 times and done a bunch of shows with him, but.
Yeah, Vanessa was like, don't give him a hard time. He's just got lots of anxiety. It just doesn't, he's so busy, right? Like he just doesn't remember. But I was just like, come on, man. You've been staring at me all show. Like, I'm the guy who really likes your work. I keep walking over here to talk to you. Mignola, obviously, if you haven't figured out, is a huge influence on my style. So
he's one of my boyfriend's favorite artists.
I thought you were going to say he's one of my boyfriends. Full stop.
His wife might have a problem with that.
His wife is super chill. So is his daughter, by the way. She's really cool. His whole family's cool. Like every year when I see them there and talk to them, they're like you expect like that's the other thing. Like when you meet artists like Mignola, you expect this level of like, I'm this super famous artist. I don't have time to really talk to you. Like I got this and that to do. Because I have met I've met artists who have treated me that way before, where they're just not in the mood. But Mignola's always like takes the time to like. If you see his booth when people are lined up to get autographs and stuff, he very much spends the time talking to each of his fans. He's not like, here you go, next one. Here you go, next one. You know, he's like, thanks for buying this. Like, I remember my first time meeting him, I had like a stack of comics. But then as I was getting closer, I was like, I'm just going to have him sign one. Because I didn't want to be that guy asking him to sign a stack. Because I saw those, there were people in line with me like 50 comics. I had like 6. But I was like, just sign the one for me. No, that's good. And he's like, you want me to sign the rest of those? I'm like, no, you got this huge line. And he was like, if you spent the money to buy my comic books, I will sign as many things as you want. And then I had mentioned I bought like a Hellboy. This is before he worked with Funko. I had this like Funko looking thing. And he's like, bring it by later. And he signed that for me too. And then, again, he can never remember my name. But he's someday he's going to remember my name. But I've had I had a conversation with him here at C2E2 one year. He was signing, and I happened to be there early. I saw him walking the floor, so I'm like, fuck it, I'm going to talk to this guy and introduce myself, and just like a hero. So I'm like, I'm just going to do it. And if he hates it, he hates it. If I ramble on, I ramble on. But we had like a 10, 20-minute convo. You know, we just talked about art. It was great. But then in San Diego, when he didn't remember my name, I felt a little sad. I was like, but again, he probably saw hundreds of people between those two shows. So
one of the things I've learned about artists, celebrities, anybody, the attitude has nothing to do with how famous somebody is or isn't.
It's just
how they are.
Yeah. That's actually an interesting way to look at it. I never thought about that. Because I have run into artists that I really like where I'd be like, hey, can I get an autograph or can I talk to you? And they'd literally be like, no, I'm too busy right now. And they would just walk away. And you're just like, that's cool.
It's just a personality thing. I've worked with a lot of celebrities over the years, and it doesn't matter how famous they are or aren't. It's just their personality. So.
Cool. Well, we're a little over time.
Personally, that Mike doesn't remember your name because that's just how he is.
Oh, he gonna remember my name someday. That's a bucket list item. I'm gonna make sure that man remembers me, and I don't mean that in a bad way. That sounds like a threat. I don't mean it as a threat. You know, like in case anyone wants to post this clip later. I don't mean that as a threat.
Yeah.
I remember how excited I was the first time Jim Lee remembered who I was. And last time, when he came to Como, the first year we had the show, as he was leaving, I was all the way down the hall from him, and I just said, bye, Jim. He put his suitcases down and ran all the way over to me to give me a hug and tell me bye.
Dude, that's awesome.
Oh, wow.
Yeah, so Jim Lee was the artist I was talking about. I met Jim Lee my first C2E2 in Chicago, and I think I was like 22 years old at the time or something. I forget how old I was. And I saw him walking. I asked him if I could talk to him, you know, and he was just like, I'm really busy right now. I can't talk. And he just walked away. And I was like shocked. That was the first time that ever happened to me. So I was just like, what the hell? And then I saw him again at San Diego Comic-Con. No, E3. My friends got me into E3 with them. And I saw him there. And this was like a year later. And I said, fuck it. I'm going to talk to this guy again. So I saw him walk by with his assistant. Told my friends to wait a second. I chased him down. I said, look, man, I got to get something on my chest. I met you last year at C2E2. You said you were too busy to talk. And you wouldn't even, you couldn't even sign a comic for me. You got a minute? Can we talk? And he felt really bad. He's like, I did that. I'm so sorry. I must have been in my own headspace. And he talked to me for a minute, took a photo with me. And I was just like, wow. So I, misjudged him, obviously. But it was super chill. He's a super chill dude. And then Sean Murray and I saw him at San Diego in 2019. He was coming down the escalator while I was going up. And he was just like, hey, what's up, man? To me, before I was like, holy shit, it's Jim Lee. And I was like, holy shit, he remembered me. That little thing like really elevates you in a way you can't even, there's no words for it. I was just like, that's cool. Because I really love Jim Lee's work. He was one of those artists. All the Image guys, man. I loved all the Image guys. Like, because I was in a sea of reading Marvel and DC forever. And then when those guys branched out and formed Image Comics, like everything that came out of that company was like wild and different. Like no artist in that group was like doing the same thing. So I was just like, and it didn't matter what the comic book was. The art was so different. You were just buying it all, right? Like Spawn was one of those. Spawn, I remember, my God, I collected all the way until like, I think issue 100. And then I had to stop because I'm like, this is too many. I have too many comics, Spawn comics. And I think I went back to buy 300. I think McFarlane did 300. So obviously.
Yeah.
But we're a little over time.
Fan-friendly artists out there. I mean, there's a reason people like Jim, and half of it's because he's incredibly talented, but the other half is just because he is just so nice. I'm glad that you were able to have that talk with him that second time, because that is really out of character for him to act that way.
Well, I've gotten to a point in my life now where I feel like I will tell people if they're rude and then let them handle it. Like either tell me to fuck off or like be like, give them an opportunity to explain themselves. In this case, I was shocked when he did that, but once I spoke to him for a little bit at E3, I was like, this guy's he was probably just busy.
You've done a lot of shows yourself now, man. I mean, are you really telling me that, there's never been a point where you were just really, really busy with what you were doing and what you had going on? And, if somebody came up and wanted to, buy a print from you, you wouldn't have been like, you got to come back later. I mean, I just can't, I'm doing a thing,
I always feel bad when I have to, there's been moments where I'd be like, hey, can we catch up in a little bit, or it's really busy. Like at Gen Con, right? I have friends stop by and I'd be like, can we catch up in like a little bit? Can you come back and we'll talk? because Gen Con's like nonstop. You know Gen Con, man. There's people there like every 5 to 10 minutes. So, but I guess I always usually feel bad about that because I feel like, like if someone I haven't seen in a long time stops by and then I haven't spoken to them and then I can't. But that's just me. I feel bad about everything, guys. If you haven't figured that out. Like everything makes me feel bad. I feel bad when I have to like tell somebody no, but I've gotten better at that too. But Joe will see. So Joe, who's been asking questions and stuff, is going to hopefully join me at a show someday and shadow me at a booth. So he's gonna get the full effect of my crazy at a booth. But we're a little over time, so I was, if there's anything that maybe you wanted to touch on, Tatiana, that I didn't touch on, I can definitely promote your website once I upload the video and stuff. But is there anything specific? Is there a question I should have asked that you wanted me to ask? I guess is a good way to say it. Which is an interesting hot take for you.
I think so. I mean, I think, I really enjoyed being on today. I just wanted to, I was glad that it wasn't too structured and, the three of us just were able to kind of chat and talk about different things. And there was a couple times Jason was looking at us like we were crazy, which was pretty good.
That's why I reeled it back into the magic stuff because I've totally spaced and forgot that he does not collect comic books. So,
well, my favorite Green Lantern is Ryan Reynolds. So, I mean, I'm.
Oh. Here's the thing. That movie had potential. Like, I was really excited for that movie because I love Green Lantern. My voice just cracked, by the way. And I saw that movie in the theater. It started out fine, and then it just kind of tanked at the end because they tried to... DC does this classic thing where they try to rush the character. Instead of, you could have just given him a minor villain and got us excited about the character. And then introduce a bigger villain in the next movie.
Yeah. They didn't have to do the whole origin story and try to cram it all into one movie. We have to add the love interest. We have to put Sinestro in. We have to do his backstory. And then it was, I agree with you. It started out great. And I've been a huge Green Lantern fan for a long time. And then it just completely went off a cliff.
And you're just like, and now I've heard rumors that they're rebooting it. I heard a rumor that Tom Cruise is playing Hal Jordan, but it's not going to be a Hal Jordan movie.
Oh, the Lantern Corps movie, yeah.
Yeah. So I was just like, okay.
About that one, and it's, that kind of stunt casting is something you can do with a movie where you're not locking in an actor like that to multiple, franchise obligations. But it still doesn't make it super likely they're gonna get him for that kind of job because Tom doesn't do anything where he's not like the main face on the poster. Like
he's also like 5'5".
Yeah. He's not really
cast somebody taller.
I mean, you never know. Brad Pitt was technically in the second Deadpool movie.
That is true. He was for about 0.5 seconds.
So you never know.
True.
I mean, I would love to see I'm going on a movie rant here real quick, but I love so Batman's my other favorite, one of my favorite superheroes, and Batman versus Superman, I felt like was a movie that had potential and then it fell apart. But the whole sequence where Batman's whooping on those dudes in the warehouse is probably the best part of that whole movie. And you could have just made a whole, and then there's that moment where we thought we were going to get a Ben Affleck Batman movie, and then the whole Joss Whedon crap happened, so it's all falling apart. We're not going to get into that, but now this new Batman movie that's coming out, I feel like it's going to be amazing from what I'm seeing. It looks great.
Looks great.
And they're not leaning into this let's give a they're not leaning into an origin story per se. They're leaning more into the detective side of him becoming Batman already and doing his job, which I really like because we have not gotten a single Batman movie where you see him doing the detective work. He's just done the job and he's there to close out the deal.
He
and I feel
generally sources all of that to Alfred or
that man's got to be tired. He's got to be asking for bonuses every year.
Look into this for me, will you? I got to go punch some people.
Right. Here, fly the plane that I just flew here in. I'd be like, fuck you, fly yourself. I'm at home trying to make dinner, man. What
I would love for a Batman themed movie? I would love a Renee Montoya The Question movie.
Ooh.
I've always loved her character, and so it could be her maybe becoming the Question. That would be so cool. I've always loved kind of that. I was always a big fan of like Greg Rucka's Batman stuff. And so I always loved the way he wrote her character. And then, I mean, it doesn't even have to be the Question. It could just be Renee Montoya doing like detective stuff. Like, I like that side of things a lot.
So that's where I thought they were going to go with, like, you know, when they did the Gotham series, I thought it was cool that you got to see this like side of Gordon and then all those little side characters. But then they started introducing the Rogues Gallery, like, just randomly to like make it interesting, I guess. But that's when I stopped watching because I was like, okay, these characters don't exist yet. They can't exist yet. Because there's no Batman yet, right?
Yeah.
And with the Green Lantern stuff, like, I feel like you have all the materials. It's the same idea as Batman. You have all the materials you need to make a decent movie. But for some reason, DC just can't get their shit together. It's just like, come on, man. You're a big name company. Solutions. Let me film the Green Lantern movie. I'll make it good. For starters, I won't cast Ryan Reynolds in it. Nothing against Ryan Reynolds. I think he's awesome.
Movies are really good, though. The DC animated movies are quite good.
But the animated ones are great.
Together.
I like Ryan Reynolds as Deadpool. I don't think he's a good Green Lantern.
Yeah, he's better cast as that kind of character. That's using his strengths. You know, the Green Lantern characters could be cast by more of an archetypical actor who doesn't lean on comedy timing quite the way Ryan does. But I mean, he's great at it, which is why it's one of his strengths. But I mean, they don't need that for a Green Lantern, you know?
And honestly, Hal Jordan's a pretty serious character. Like, he's not the funny, silly guy, and so that's part of what made it feel weird. And I love Ryan Reynolds, but I don't think he's a great fit either.
Oh, Joe said that I guess they've been sold a bunch of times. The property's been sold a bunch of times. Yeah, but who owns it now? DC still owns it. So the thing with Marvel, right? Like, Marvel got back all their, like, everyone, but I think they got back all their characters except Spider-Man right now. Like, they bought... Disney was like, fuck it, they bought Fox, right? So they got back X-Men. Like, they were like, fuck it, you guys keep screwing this shit up over and over. And then they, you know, obviously own Fantastic Four, which is a whole thing I'm not going to get into. But
right.
They also don't own Spider-Man, even though they can just buy Sony if they really wanted to and just take the character back. And
they have like a fair relationship or something there.
Well,
they have like a bit.
Yeah. I mean, there was a minute where you didn't think we were going to get our Spider-Man movie because Sony wanted extra money and Disney was like, nah. And you're like, you have so much money, just pay them. Like, either buy the character or pay them what he's worth. And I feel like DC is doing stuff like that where they own their characters. They haven't, like, Warner Brothers owns those characters and they still own them. It's like, so just do it. But we're getting off here. I'm taking us to a 2-hour point here, which is going to be bad.
We can talk like hours about nerdy
I
stuff.
think what we should do is have you on one more time. We could talk nerdy stuff again, and maybe Jason will read some comic books before that.
You can edit it down to some quality content.
This is all good stuff.
One good hour is all you really need.
This is what I was telling you, Tatiana, before you logged in for the show. Is like, this is what the show is. Like, it's just literally supposed to be us hanging out, talking. Like, the idea behind the show is, like, we have a base idea of what we're going to talk about, and then we just run with it. Like, we could talk about whatever at this point, and it's just fun. Because the idea for the show came from me sitting around talking to my friends about random things where I'd be like, that could have been a podcast. And if Andrew was on, he would probably have very heated opinions about everything we talked about. He is like, I told Andrew, like, we're like those two guys, we're like the two Muppets that sit in the balcony, who are consistently, but I'm the nice one, and Andrew's the one who's got him and I he's going to be on next week to talk about the Book of Boba Fett, and that's going to be a thing. Because he's got a lot of opinions.
Yeah.
And I'm calling him out because he's not on the show right now. But let me take us offline, and then we can, if you hang on a second. Thanks for everyone who's watching, especially Joe. You've been asking a lot of questions and saying a lot, which is great. Maybe I'll have Joe on someday. I should have Joe on someday with you, Tatiana, because Joe is a huge Magic fan. Like, he's that fan that buys all the stuff, except the very expensive collector's pieces, because Joe be broke like me. So, hang on a second.
A lot of fun. Yeah, we didn't talk about playing Magic or any of that kind of stuff. That'd be fun.
Yeah, we can do a call when we talk about Magic, because yes, let's do that. I'm not going to get into it right now, because here's the thing. If I go over the 2-hour mark with this program, sometimes it just kills the video. So, hold on. Yeah, I don't remember who my guest is next week. Hang on a second. Oh, so on the 18th, we have Brian Mark Taylor. If you know his stuff. pretty amazing.